May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Bob Shuman. Shuman the Human. We used to call him that sometimes. And you'll hear his story. He was a student of Shunryu Suzuki, and at some point he left. He was a student for years, and then he left and went to Cimarron Zen Center and studied with Joshu Sasaki, and was there for years. And then he went to Rochester and studied with Philip Kapleau, and was there for years, stuck with that, went to Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife, Hennie, to lead a little Zen group there. And that because they weren't technically into it, when COVID happened, they didn't do Zoom. They just retired. And but he's had quite a history, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting. Something I rarely mention, and maybe I should start interjecting it here every time, because we could sure use it, is to thank our sponsors, which is you. And we depend here on Cuke Archives on the support of our beloved listeners and those who follow Cuke.com, ShunryuSuzuki.com, catch us on Instagram or Facebook. We would really appreciate if you visit Cuke.com, CUKE.com, and hit the donate button or donate drop down, and either write a check or send a PayPal contribution or become a PayPal subscriber for as little as $1 a month. Anyway, we would really appreciate it. Thank you most kindly for your consideration. So after we've had our pause to meditate, we'll give Bob a call and see what he has to say. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Robert Shuman a call. Hi there.
Hey, David.
Hi, Bob. My goodness. How's everything going with you?
Well, we're old fogies, and we're my wife and myself, of course, we just have been doing house cleaning work. We just do it ourselves, no employees, for the last 40 years, and well, and basically, to be quite frank, where the moment-to-moment Zen practice is the main ground for us in terms of our worldly existence, so to speak, is the being rooted in Zen practice, and at the same time, of course, very much synonymous with that, the everyday functioning of our samsara lives, so to speak, taking care of all the things that have to be taken care of, and things like that.
You were cleaning homes?
Yeah, we do. In terms of our everyday work situation, we clean. We do house cleaning work, and just me and my wife. And we've been doing it for 40 years, that's our source of income, and it's service work. We do it. It's fine. But like I was mentioning, it's really the moment-to-moment Zazen practice, and maybe we can talk about that later if you want. That really is the focus of our lives, so to speak. It's very interesting. My wife had both the Crooked Cucumber book and the Thank You and OK book is something that we really super appreciate. Just wonderful books, and I'm not much of a reader, but my wife, she devours it, and she reads me passages from it at different times. And it's ironic that I was going to I really want to contact David, because they just very recently we came upon this little part in Thank You and OK where you were told you sort of had an intuition about Mu practice, and that it would be something simple to get your teeth into type of thing, and you were right on with that. And it was such a shame, we felt, that whoever told you, it's not a mantra, you don't repeat, Mu. It's not. That's not. They discourage you from doing what would be good to do. Even one Mu is the whole ground of being, you might say, is suchness manifested, and even if you look at the commentary, this is on the koan Mu. I'm not necessarily saying to do it as a koan, but as a practice rather. But nevertheless, I realized you were with Rinzai Roshi at the time, and you were getting a little involved with the Mu practice, and then he discouraged you from practicing. That shouldn't be a mission, it shouldn't be a mantra, and that type of very misleading. In that, even if you look at the commentary in Mu, and the first koan and the Mumonkan, the guideline is, of course, it's more melting into Mu, merging with Mu, giving yourself wholeheartedly, to Mu, whatever. It sounds very strenuous, but it's actually it's a matter of constancy, and it's a matter of persistence, and it's just a matter of it's basically an ongoing practice, but and I was going to mention about that. So I was going to, in other words, to share with you some thoughts on practice, and I don't mean to sound like proselytizing or anything, but just wanted to share what we found over the years, many years of practice, to be very helpful, and I thought some listeners might might by chance find it helpful as well. So I don't know if I should get into that or not.
Sure.
Well, the basis, of the whole thing is every phenomena, talking to David on the phone, holding the phone, the dripping of this faucet in the sink, the Baldy roach crawling across the floor. Every phenomenon is a manifestation of this ultimate reality, this oneness reality, this no self, no other reality, this many words for the same thing. Call it God reality, call it mu reality. Everything is a manifestation of that suchness reality, thusness reality, and including mu. So in Zen practice, really, if you penetrate any one thing completely, you've really penetrated to the core of everything. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's the reason why such a simple practice like the mu practice is infinitely simple but infinitely deep. And when I say mu practice, what I'm suggesting is, and it's kind of a loop here, of course in Rinzai practice, you have Sanzen, and as I've practiced Rinzai practice for many years as well as Soto practice, and you have Sanzen, and you're being, as you experienced there, I think, and thank you, okay, you're being, quizzed, and you have to, answer blah, blah, blah. But the practice that we're talking about is very much in line, is mu practice, but you might say Soto style.
Uh-huh.
You can call it Shikan mu.
Uh-huh.
Meaning, David, just bringing yourself, and it's so portable in your everyday life. In the formal practice, you bring yourself back to the mu, very simple, and you do it with an ever infinitely patient, all-accepting attitude of mind, not caring one hoot, one whit about how well you're doing it or how not well you're doing it, the ongoingness of it. No gaining idea. Don't care one iota. Buddha doesn't care. Buddha mind doesn't care. Ultimate reality doesn't care. And David shouldn't care. You just bring you don't care about how well or how good. That's one of the biggest traps. Don't care. Every moment is new and fresh. And in this moment, you bring yourself back to the practice. And don't care how faint it is, if it's as faint as one drop in the Pacific Ocean, or whether it's right up in your face. It's okay. You give yourself to the in other words, if it's faint and you can hardly, and you can't find mu, whatever, what do? Mu. You go back to mu. I don't care how faint it is. And the next moment, it could be smack in your face, bam. So without second guessing it, without any fancy talk, it's so simple, but infinitely deep, because mu practice through and through makes you connected to this underlying thusness reality, suchness reality that is so important in our human life. If we're not in touch with that ultimate reality, we're just like a leaf in a raging river. We're it's not to say things are going to be perfect, but it's there for you in times of samsaric. Oh, everything is beautiful, running beautifully. Everything is horrible. Doesn't matter. Always at home with mu. In other words, always at home with a gigantic capital H, if that makes sense. Does any of this make sense? Or
sure.
Not really? It's there for you in all circumstances. So it's the, even though on a worldly level, things are going swimmingly, the stock market is going up or whatever, or lying in bed groaning with tummy pain or whatever, in cancer or something. Okay, no one. It's not to say, but it's going to be in the deepest sense. Even though you're struggling, in the midst of the struggle, it's okay with a capital O, with a gigantic capital O in this case. Okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the same way, is what I meant in that same spirit. We meant when we said always at home with a capital H. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
In other words, you're always at home. You're always in Buddha's lap, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to speak. Does any of this make sense or not really, honestly speaking?
Well, you're just describing my practice.
Okay.
But I don't use mu.
Okay.
I use thank you. Arigatai kokoro. Grateful mind.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's impressive. Please go on.
Okay. One, the thank you, the mu, whatever, even the word whatever, everything, like we said before, everything is a manifestation. So there's nothing, in a sense, special about mu, except that the simplicity of it being one syllable, it's perhaps in terms of portability in your everyday life might be helpful. In other words, when you're washing dishes, if you bring the mind back to mu, you're bringing your mind back to the washing of the dishes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that reality, it through and through, it's washing. It becomes no washing dishes. Namely, just you're at the same time you're grounded in you might say ultimate reality simultaneously without any thought about it with the washing of dishes. So that's kind of where the ordinary becomes the sacred. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything. There's no reason to be bored with washing dishes. Everything takes on great fulfillment in each moment with this type of practice.
Yeah.
So you have basically with the Shikan Mu practice that we're speaking of, bringing the mind back to the Mu in the same way that that we talked about that you're doing with thank you, and then in everyday life when we when we catch ourselves or whatever, we bring ourselves back, and so in that way we link up our ordinary activity with this ultimate reality, with this thusness reality, suchness reality, whatever you want to call it, that is there simultaneously with it. And the whole spirit, of course, is no gaining idea, continuing forever, endless path. All of those things pertain in terms of the spirit of this practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just that still makes sense, does it?
Yeah. And your point about the one syllable is good. I was sitting in a Shingon temple with my wife Katrinka. Back
Yes.
in 2014, we spent 10 weeks in Japan. That was great. And Koya-san, and there the monks had the Sanskrit for one syllable on a hanging piece of cloth that in a little holder, like sort of like the goalposts of a football field with a banner hanging below it. So, but a very nice thing, and just the syllable for sometimes it's like I think I didn't hear them pronounce it, but it's sort of like om, and they focus on that seed syllable. Focusing on seed syllables is an old practice. Now
absolutely
the Nichiren Shoshu people, they're into a bunch of syllables. They go Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, homage to the name of the Lotus Sutra.
Yes.
And but actually the way I do it, it sort of is one syllable. It's like the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it kind of it runs together very, very nicely. The other thing, just a side point, is a small point, but perhaps it rings a bell of sorts. The universal word in all languages for mother has always the There's something about it's like a primal sound, that every language, as different as languages can be, they very often have this for mother, and so there's something there, be it mu or even om. There's some. I'm not saying there's the amount of value there, but it's something also, But the one syllable also, of course. But of course, like you say, the running together the way you do it is also, I can appreciate that. That is, it's almost like one syllable when it runs together. I understand that.
Yeah, and thank you for me goes back very, very far, further than thank you and okay. But
expressing gratitude, you mean?
Yeah.
Expressing gratitude, yeah.
Yeah. But I have thought about that what you were saying. That's really impressive. Good for you. That's all really good to hear.
Well, yeah, we just wanted to share it with you because it is such a wonderful practice, and it's really so in line, in the spirit. It's not, like I say, it's not done as a so-called koan, in that sense, but it's done as just an ongoing, no gaining idea, ongoing, endless practice, moment to moment. Instead of maybe counting your breath, or instead of telling yourself just sit, you by bringing the mind back, in this case to the mu, you're bringing your mind back to just sitting, and so then of course the portability aspect is very important in one's everyday life. And so that also of course is very, very, very important to integrate into all aspects of your everyday life. So all activities become a manifestation of this the mu. What it does is it's like a gyroscope. It ties you in to that oneness mind that goes beyond even oneness. I mean, to that no self, no other reality, and it ties you into that automatically, and so that's a way, and yet you're participating fully. On a samsaric level, on a worldly level, you're doing everything to the best of your abilities. It doesn't interfere whatsoever with that, and so it's kind of a wonderful combination in that it reconnects you. It's very interesting. When you see a newborn child, I'm not talking about but newborn. When it sees you, it's just bam. It's just seeing. It's just seeing with no idea of seeing. It doesn't think David. It doesn't think seeing. It doesn't think this or that or whatever else. It's just this is it. So it's not that we want to. But so really that baby is connected in a very intimate way with this realm of thusness, of suchness, and now it's not to become a baby again, but rather the challenge is as a Zen practicer is to participate fully in the worldly life, with all the acculturation and all of the things that we have to do is in the worldly sense, and yet at the same time to be connected to this underlying oneness reality, so to speak, ultimate reality at the same time, simultaneously with, and so that really very much that ties in very much with the Mu practice of which we're speaking. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You're and I don't. I said you're describing my practice. Actually, I'm not as devoted to the one thing as you are. I do use counting sometimes. I use nothing a lot. I focus on different things at different times. But I think that's a very good path you're on, doing that. I'd like to hear what led to your developing that practice.
Well, good. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
Go on. Tell me what.
I'm sorry.
What led to that?
Well, one word: desperation. In other words, really, I guess Suzuki Roshi, to use his word, becomes serious. Serious. I believe. You're. In other words, level of seriousness that demands to take refuge, to find refuge someplace, Otherwise, it's like you're in a washing machine being spun around all the time. And so this is to give you groundedness in your life, no matter what the circumstance, the external circumstance, to be grounded in practice, in a moment-to-moment practice, like I said, like a gyroscope. And that's basically the name of the game. I guess in my past, incidentally, I've had a stuttering problem since I was 4 years old. That was a gigantic obstacle in high school and stuff. That was really a challenge. But forgetting about that, it was just a difficult life, and that's good, because that's food for practice. It makes you more so-called, like you said, the word sincere in your practice, more devoted in your practice, on a milli-moment to milli-moment level, quite frankly, and that's really where the value emerges, is out of that devotion, out of that constancy, if that makes sense.
Well, constancy is a word that Suzuki used,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He really taught constancy. That's well said. And with Sirius, he talked about Sirius from 2 points of view. One was to be serious about practice was not an emotional seriousness, because at that level, if people were emotionally serious, he'd say, "Don't be so serious,"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So serious meant constancy.
Yes.
Yes.
It
didn't mean it's like there's a wholesome serious and there's an unwholesome serious.
Yes. Did he mean, okay, another way of saying it, to make sure I'm understanding what you're kindly explaining, David, did he mean Did he mean? Let's see. One second. Let the old fogey brain get into gear here. I was getting my verbiage here. Let's see. Did he by chance mean? Okay, constancy. Yeah, constancy. Did he really mean a devotion to practice? Is the way I was interpreting it. A devotion to practice, you might say, is in that sense serious. A more devoted. A more devoted attitude about practice. Does that make sense in terms of his definition as he meant it?
Again, devoted in meaning that one continued it, not that one had an emotional type of devotion or an attached. A devotion can be very attached, so not that type. I mean, and this is just the way I see it,
Right.
I can't really say what he meant.
Well, let me say this. And I wasn't there I left the year before in 1970, just a little bit before he really had the physical difficulties and everything. And I would bet. Well, it's a separate issue, but okay, I'll leave that aside. I was going to ask though. Do you know if he was given a lot of drugs at the time? I was thinking, and back then they might have loaded him up with some horrible drugs, or was that not the case? Do you know?
He didn't take a lot of drugs, no. But he was only diagnosed with cancer a few months before he died. And he was, he had gallbladder removed in like March of 1971, the year he died, and it was cancerous. They didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that. But the doctors thought they'd gotten it all. But he had, all of 1971, he definitely had a feeling that he was going to die. And you can tell it in his lectures, some of the things he said. And then, but he had a good summer at Tassajara. But right at the end, in August, before he left for the last time, the people who were working with him, who were really close with him, like his cabin cleaner, his Anja, Maggie Kress,
yes,
and his wife, and Nils Holm, who was his Jisha then, they could see that, that he'd been putting out an enormous effort that last period at Tassajara, and when he left, Maggie was just sobbing because she could see that he was really not well. However, they didn't know he had cancer then, and when he got back to the city, it was he gave one talk. Anyway, he gave his last talk at the end of August, and then he was sick in bed. And they thought it was hepatitis because he was turning yellow, but it was a cancer in his liver that was making him turning yellow, and that was discovered in October by a visiting doctor, Mickey Stunkard, who you might remember from Pennsylvania.
Oh, of course I remember. Yeah.
He just looked, Mickey.
But now, was that October of 1971 or 1970?
Yeah, and he died in December of 1971.
Oh, okay, so it was October. What's so strange with the way you were describing it is because when I left, before I left, there were already a lot of talk and feeling that he was ill.
Well, he'd get these flus. He'd get flus, and people were naturally, they were very attached to him and worried about that. But that was, I can remember my older son Kelly being worried I was going to die 40 years ago. That's just, he was okay in 1970.
that right? That is really something.
Yeah.
That is really interesting as heck you say that, because when did he have that meeting with So and Roshi? I think it was in Esalen or something. When did that take place?
That was, well, I mean, he had met Soen several times before, but the last one, the one you're talking about, is the day he left Tassajara for the last time. And he'd been sort of wiped out when he left, but he was all right. And he and a number of people, I think they had 2 cars, went to San Juan Bautista. Like when you're driving on 101 north towards San Francisco, coming from the Monterey Salinas area, before you get to San Jose, there's a cutoff for San Juan Bautista, and Soen and I don't think Eda was there. I'm not sure. But Soen was doing a session, probably with Edo. He was always doing it with Edo in America, but I can't remember that right now. Soen was there, and Suzuki dropped by. He and Mitsu and Maggie Kress. No, not Maggie Kress. Louise Welsh and Dan Welsh. Not sure. I think I mentioned that in Crooked Cucumber. And that they came for the very end. They arrived at the very end of the session. So maybe they participated in the last zazen or something. And then they had tea with Soen and talked with him. And then moved on to San Francisco. And Suzuki talked about that in his last lecture.
Yes. And I remember, well, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Now, what the date of that ending of that session?
What's the date?
Month? That wasn't said. And no, I don't mean exact.
The date would be
but
about
the month.
I can tell you, it's about August. It's like August 20th, 1971, around there.
Right, exactly. And I, the only reason why I brought that up is because there was this on your wonderful website, Cuke. I once saw, and I was just kind of shocked by it. This fellow was criticizing him, which was it seemed to me so absurd.
You're talking about Stuart Lax.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to mention. So anyway, it seemed to me he was way off base. I mean, that he was, Suzuki Roshi, now this is only a vague recollection. You correct me, David. I understood it that he was saying how in the bowing, they made these bows, and of course bowing through and through, it's Buddha bowing to Buddha, it's going beyond yourself. It's no bowing. You're really rooted. It's going beyond any idea of rooted in anything. It's just bowing, and it's really from a dualistic description. It's very much rooted in ultimate reality at the moment of the bowing. You're giving yourself completely to the activity of the moment, and so it just is a manifestation of that ultimate reality, so to speak. And anyway, and I mean, in other words, that there was somehow Stuart Lackey. He made it sound like he was on this self-aggrandizement trip or something. That Suzuki Roshi was, which was to me completely absurd. It just didn't. It just seemed like, and especially I think maybe at that time already he was feeling ill. You're certainly not playing those type of games you're much more what I would call serious about your practice than to get involved with this self-aggrandizement type of trying to inflate your image or something. I don't know where he was. Maybe he was projecting or something. I'm not sure where it was coming from, but it seemed like it was way off base. But maybe I don't know.
I think what Stuart didn't like Suzuki's praising Soen, and he was sort of saying something like, ordinary people. He was sort of separating Soen from ordinary people, sort of elevating. So Stuart saw that as, elevating Soen, and Suzuki elevating himself like they're not ordinary people. But and I think maybe Stuart had a point in Suzuki could have chosen his words differently, but you got to know how to listen to them or how to read them.
Yes.
Because of course we are all ordinary people. However,
right.
When we're practicing, or when someone is, say, doing some practice like ballet or speaking of the Dharma, that's what's not ordinary. I mean, it's ordinary too in a way, but it's activity that is leading to awakening or something. I'd have to look at it again, but I could see where Stuart was coming from. Another thing that Stuart really criticized was in one of the introductions to Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, Trudy Dixon's description of what a Zen master is, or she might have said of what a Roshi is, and sort of elevating him beyond just being an ordinary person. Stuart took offense at that, and I could understand it. I was never a big fan of the way she described things there, but again, Trudy had pretty clearly an authentic enlightenment experience, and she was expressing this from that point of view. And actually, expressing the higher reality of all of us. But anyway, that's a function Stuart has played. He was at the first practice period at Tassajara.
Oh, I think I remember him vaguely, because I was certainly there too. Is he a rather short person?
Yeah, maybe so. I hesitate to say so, but that's pretty good memory. Let me ask you something. How did you get to Tassajara? What led you there? What led you to come to Zen Center?
Well, at the time, I was, like I say, searching for some stability in my life, so to speak. And so I was hitchhiking around the country, doing visiting what's called intentional communities and things like that. And anyway, I ended up in San Francisco and Berkeley, and I guess that I met with then it was Katagiri Sensei, and and I met with Suzuki Roshi actually also, and he told me, why don't I move in across the street? And so that's what I did.
What year was that?
That was in late '66, probably. Yeah. I think it was late '66.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you come from Boston?
I grew up in the Boston area, yes.
Yeah. And you said you were looking at some intentional communities. Do you remember any that you could
Well,
mention?
one of them was called Bruderhof, and that was one of them I remember. And
where was it?
Where was that? Bruderhof, I'm not sure. It was someplace in the Northeast, though. I don't recall.
And what was their trip?
I'm sorry. This wasn't I was just exploring. I didn't become. I don't know if the right word is use the word the devoted again. I wasn't devoted to anything about it. I mean, I just sort of exploring, and I found it. I was sort of interested in the idea of community and things like that, and so I was just exploring that aspect of how people live together in harmony, and sort of exploring that type of situation. But I really didn't know what I was looking for, really, and then I became very serious about the Zen practice.
So when you met Katakiri and Suzuki, how was that?
Well, that was fine. It gave me, of course, I had, for as a beginner, if you, I think you've commented this. I remember times, if somebody is Japanese in a robe and whatever, you sort of, you elevate them to some godlike status or whatever. And so I don't know if my impression was in touch with reality or not, but that's kind of what, the way you regarded such people, so to speak. And I'm not saying that they didn't deserve a very high opinion on the part of their fellow human beings. I'm not saying that they didn't deserve that, because they undoubtedly did. Really, I kind of remember one talk when Suzuki Roshi and this is in Sokoji when Katagiri Sensei at the time and Suzuki Roshi were given a talk. I remember being very impressed with the fact that they didn't seem to be looking for an opinion on the part of the audience of adulation or anything. They were just sort of matter of fact, just saying what had to be said, and they weren't doing it for so-called egotistical, selfish reasons, type of thing. I remember being rather impressed by, at least that is a feeling that I got, that and that was quite impressive to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you were at the first practice period. Tell me how that all evolved. And anything you can remember, any details you can remember. Were you doing any work there in the city?
I'm sorry. Work? You're talking about work?
Did you have a job in San Francisco while you were at
no. I was at Tassajara for a number.
Before Tassajara, when you arrived in 1966, before you came to the Zen Center, had you been there a while? Did you have any sort of job or anything? Or?
Yeah, incidentally, now that I left probably early '71 is when I left.
No, I'm talking about when you arrived.
I know that I was sort of just making a correction, just a factual correction there, because I know I had mentioned 70, but I now remember I think it was 71 when I left. Anyway, in terms of a job, I think I would sell. I would sell the Berkeley Barb.
Oh, that is terrific! You were selling the Berkeley Barb. Wow! All right. So, do you remember all the interest and excitement about raising money to buy, well, first the horse pasture, and then turning out we bought Tassajara? Do you remember all that?
I do remember. I remember this lecture hall with Suzuki Roshi. It was a fundraising event, I guess, and of course I was up in the balcony area there. I remember. I don't know if you know the event I'm speaking with. I think probably Alan Watts was there as well. I'm not sure. It was a big event in a big hall. Does that ring a bell for you?
Well, there were a few things like that. One with Alan Watts. Alan Watts gave a talk, and yeah, it was something like at the Avalon Ballroom or something. I can't remember where.
Yeah, I don't recall either where that occurred, but I do remember that I think we were actually functioning as somewhat of an usher there.
Yeah.
In the upper area there.
Yeah, it was a fundraiser to buy, either the horse pasture if it happened in 66 or Tassajara if it happened in 67.
Yes.
So when did you get down to Tassajara?
Well, I guess it must have been 67 because
I know it was 67, yeah. But when? Yeah. Do you remember? Were you there well before the first practice period?
Oh yeah, I guess we were there before the first practice period. Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there were some other people there. Lanny Watts, I guess, and Sally Block was there, I think, and there was just a couple of people I remember being there at the time.
Lanny what?
You remember Lanny Watts? Does that ring a bell for you? Lanny, L-A-N. I think it's I'm guessing L-A-N-N-Y.
Huh. Yeah. That's wow. Good memory. Yeah. Go on.
Well, nothing much to be said, really. It was just, it was finding your way with the daily practice and trying to do your best in that circumstance. Yeah.
Do you remember anything about the first practice period?
Not really separate. I sort of like all the I went to many practice periods, and I think that they all kind of, in my mind now, none of them stand out in terms of anything about one versus the other, if that's what you mean. They all. I always found, just to mention, Tassajara for me was always it was a difficulty for me, especially I found the cold being sort of a constant keisaku, the cold that was a kind of a difficult issue for me, and of course I had a lot of hip pain and leg pain, so my that type of thing was always very much a difficulty for me.
Did you have chilblains?
I don't know what chilblains are.
Well, David Schneider had very bad chilblains.
What is chilblains?
Well, it's sort of like frostbite. It's,
Oh, no. I did not have that. No.
It's
no.
not. It's
sorry,
not
no.
frostbite, but it's that sort of a terrible problem with the fingers, the extremities, just not being able to deal with the cold.
Well, no, this is more like a shivering thing.
Yeah, I
would
see.
Say a shivering thing,
Yeah. Now, do you remember being there when Tatsugami came from Japan to lead?
Oh, absolutely.
He led three practice periods.
That's right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Well,
remember it was all
that
controversy about. Of course, I remember. Yeah, I remember that. And the controversy about how his style was so much different than Suzuki Roshi's style, and in terms of if people are taking things from the kitchen at night, lock the kitchen. Yeah, that was Tatsugami Roshi's way of dealing with those things, and Suzuki Roshi had a more mellow style about it, I guess you might say.
Yeah. Did you leave Tassajara while he was while he was there teaching?
Did I leave? What do you mean leave? Leave in the middle of it? I never left. I always completed the training programs. You mean?
No, I'm trying to remember. There was a couple of people who left, but I can't remember who they are.
Left me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, they left Tassajara because they just couldn't take his style.
Oh no! I no, absolutely not. No, I was not one of those. No way. Hey. No. I accepted. I didn't make a thing of it. I wasn't bothered by the difference in style, although I never necessarily felt a great affinity for Tatsugami Roshi, but I certainly didn't. I thought that was more my problem than his problem. I mean,
okay.
I do remember there was, I don't think I always got the feeling that that Katagiri sensei at the time, he sort of, I don't know if I'm not sure, but I got maybe a little bit of a sense that he didn't enjoy Tatsugami Roshi all that much, but maybe I'm mistaken about that.
Yeah, I would say he couldn't stand Tatsugami.
Okay.
A lot of us, like I was sort of like you. I was just going along with it. It was, we were learning things. He had a nice disposition. He just, like you say, had a different style that a lot of us felt didn't have the depth of and the warmth of Suzuki's style. But, it was just something that was happening, and Suzuki couldn't be everywhere, and we were learning something, so it was all right. Hey, I remember one thing. So you were in the city and you needed to get a job, and you saw that one job you talked to some people about there. Should I get this job as a chicken strangler? And you said, well, somebody has to do it. Maybe Buddhists should do it so other people don't get the bad karma.
No, I think you're confusing me with somebody else. I don't remember that at all, David. That doesn't ring a bell at all. Honestly, I'm not trying to cover anything up. I just honestly believe that was somebody else who said that. It wasn't so to speak.
Well,
I don't recall that at all about dealing with strangling chickens. I couldn't. That never came to. I mean, that's a completely foreign activity.
Well, you were just looking through. Look, if it was you, if somebody was just looking for a job and noticed there was that job and commented on it. It wasn't like you went and applied for it.
I don't recall that at all. Honestly, I swear, I don't recall it at all.
All right. Here's another memory I have of you, and again, maybe it's somebody else. Is that you were flying back to Boston, and there had been a couple of plane hijackings. So the federal authorities developed a profile of the sort of person who would hijack a plane, and someone, I thought it was you, was held up in an airport for a while, not knowing why, and it turned out it was because of their profile. I mean, literally what they looked like, and maybe some other stuff. Do you remember anything about that? Okay,
David, first of all, I never flew back to Boston. I always hitchhiked back to Boston, or I took the bus. But I very often hitchhiked. And one incident that did happen to me, I was hitchhiking on the New Jersey Turnpike, and the police picked me up. They thought I was a rapist. Let's see. I'm sorry. I was on Pennsylvania Turnpike, I guess. Yeah, I was on Pennsylvania Turnpike, and the police picked me up. The highway patrol, state highway patrol, I guess, state police picked me up, and they came over from New Jersey, because the crime had happened in New Jersey, a rape, and they thought I fit the description. You know, I had short hair, I had a backpack, I looked like, you know, whatever the person who was somehow identified as being the suspect. And
that's it. That's what it is.
Yeah, and they quizzed me and everything, and they actually contacted Mel, because I had been with Mel a couple of days before, and so they could verify that the timing. They would ask these questions, I remember, in a very clever way, you know, to really catch me if I was lying. You know, it was very clever method of questioning. I remember that, and then at the end, because they were convinced that I was not the criminal in that case, so to speak. They you remember one of the officers had taken me out to a dinner, and you know, and he was being very nice to me and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really.
That's really
but
nice.
They had initially they were, you know, they were, I wouldn't say rough, but they were very businesslike, to say the least. You know, about believing I would done. Hello, are you there?
Hi. Yeah, we had a glitch in the recording of something. The last thing I heard you say is they were very businesslike.
Yeah, they were very businesslike. Yeah, they were very businesslike. They yeah.
Anyway, that's what I remember. That's what I remember.
I don't know where that story of the airport came in.
No, that's that's what some people were saying, but you're correcting it that it wasn't that it was. See, it's sort of like you fit the profile. You looked like the person, or something in your description was like the person they were looking for, so they detained you.
Yes.
I just remembered that. So,
yeah.
Bob, now at some point you left Zen Center. When was that?
I think it was in 1971, like I say.
Yeah. And tell us where you went.
Well, I did go to practice, you know, with Joshu Sasaki, Roshi Rinzai practice. So, and I was there for a 5-year period, actually.
So you left. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know where you went because I visited you down there. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you saw our fellow.
But why did you
Texan
leave? Why did
Bill.
you leave and go to L.A.?
Why did I leave and go to L.A.? Because I guess I felt I had gone down there for a sesshin prior to that, and I guess there was more contact with, you know, there you had 4 or 5 sanzens a day, you know.
Yeah.
So there was more contact with the teacher, you know, for one thing.
That's what I remember. That's what I remember you saying.
Contact. Yeah. There was much more contact with the teacher, and so that was something that I very much appreciated at the time.
So, how was it down there? Cimarron Zen Center.
Cimarron Zen Center, and Mount Baldy Zen Center.
Yeah, and you were there about 5 years, right?
Yeah, I was there 5 years I was ordained there and everything, and I actually was the director of the Mount Baldy Zen Center for an 18-month period. I was offered the position of being a Zen teacher, but I declined it at the time. I wasn't interested in the credential and everything, but I was definitely offered that, and just not to flatter ourselves, but just to mention there was a seriousness of practice, and actually I ended up leaving there. I had, you know, gone through years of koans with Joshu Sasaki Roshi, but I always came back to you know, I wanted to go deeper into the Mu koan, and I wanted to focus on that. And he felt I already passed. I passed that a long time ago, the Mu koan, and so there was I felt as though to really penetrate or go deeper than just the ordinary level of depth, just to pass koans. I wanted to go much deeper into the practice of Mu practice. I went, of course, the place that had been advertised, the place that focused on Mu was the Rochester Zen Center, and so I went there, and actually it was the same situation there. The very first Doksan, I already passed the Mu koan, but that wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking to, but over time, we could still practice the Mu practice and yet very much go through other koans, So over time, it did not become such a conflict there. But that was the reason why I left, and actually over time, and then of course after having practiced there, there was after for about 4 years of going to sessions there in Rochester.
When you're saying there, you please identify where.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I left. I left, like I said, for the reason I just spoke of. Joshu Sasaki Roshi, after 5 years there of koan practice, and I went to have koan practice with Roshi Kapleau, in the Rochester Center there, and that all went fine. There was nothing, but basically I had always I was getting back to anyway, and then of course after that. There was 40 some more years of practice after that. So, but years don't really mean anything. Of course, somebody who's just beginning practice is just as much, can be just as much in touch with moment to moment ultimate reality as somebody's been practicing for 80 years. So
I agree.
All of these ideas of time of practice are really pretty silly and pretty superficial. But anyway,
I agree with you. It gives us status.
Yeah. And it's meaningless. I mean, the most important thing is making that moment to moment, like I say, in the formal practice and in one's everyday life, making that moment to moment practice effort in all aspects of one's everyday life. That's kind of the key point for us.
Yeah.
And so, good. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how was it with Kapleau in Rochester?
It was no, nothing special. We just had a, you have the tera in Doksan. It's called Doksan, not Sanzen, but you go to sessions, and that was it went fine. It was not an issue. It was you just go through one koan after another, and I would actually do sessions in my room. I would in addition to, and I was that was very serious. I don't know if serious is the right word now. I'm a little confused about that word, but I would say serious about practice for sure.
Yeah, but when did you meet your wife?
My wife is a citizen of the Netherlands. She was at Rochester Zen Center practicing there, and so we met there.
Yeah.
And we've been married since 1981.
Oh, good for you! Let's see now. That's 42 years, right?
Yeah, exactly correct. Your arithmetic is right on the button.
Wow. Pretty good. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful.
Well, she is very, very wonderful. I couldn't on a worldly level. I couldn't ask for a greater treasure, honestly.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Go on.
Go ahead.
You had something to say.
No, nothing. I guess I don't know if on the podcast it's the appropriate time to ask some questions about some individuals. I'd rather not, say that, it's more just worldly chatting, that I don't think would be appropriate on the podcast on any recording. But we can do that later, maybe.
All right. You were at Rochester for 4 years.
Rochester, yeah, overall for about 4 years. That's correct. And then for 40 more years or so here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like I say, we simply were in terms of income, we've been doing the house cleaning work. We have these ongoing clients. We do them like once every other week or mostly once every other week. And very, very, very nice people, and so-called nice. I mean, they're very, very, very much, we appreciate them, and they certainly very much appreciate us. We're very conscientious, and but on a worldly level, so that's the way that goes. But like I say, underlyingly, in terms of the basis of our lives and everything that we do, it's always that moment-to-moment practice, that we're really rooted in and give ourselves to in the best way we're able to.
Yeah, well, that's really impressive. Why'd you go to Raleigh?
Raleigh, we went to. We were living in Rochester, and we didn't have a car. And we would do things like wait for the bus, and the weather is pretty severe, David. And so I would wait for the bus. Like one example was, and I would be, and I turned my back because the snow was blowing in my face. And I'm carrying these bags, for with work supplies. And the bus passes me by because I didn't signal him. It was that type of event. In other words, I turned my back to the against the wind, to put my back against the wind instead of my face against the wind. And the bus, somehow he didn't see me signaling him, so he just went on by. That's just one example of why we sought out a warmer climate, and so we came and ended up going to Raleigh, which we've been very pleased with. Actually, Raleigh, we've been very pleased with Raleigh. What happened is very interesting. What happened is, I just want to add, there was a Zen center here, a Zen group, a small Zen group. And we just meant to stay here, just temporarily while we found our housing situation. And we ended up, renting the small house, and we ended up renting it, and we established it was already established. It was a Zen group house, and for up until the pandemic, we had formal zazen here for 3 times a week. We had formal zazen. We have a zendo. He had a zendo here, and it's just a small house. It's only like 1,000 square feet, but half the house was set aside for the Zen center. It was called the Raleigh Zen Group, and so we kept that going for about 38 years or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that.
And we would, we would, anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go on.
No, I didn't. That was about it. We did, give, no, nothing to. Well, nothing. Just that we did help out not only in the physical thing, but we also gave guidance in terms of practice, to some very serious practitioners here. So that was all very good, and anyway, and then when the pandemic came about. It was too difficult. We're sort of technical dinosaurs, so we couldn't do the Zoom business. That was beyond our technical capabilities. so we basically stopped doing that, and so now the Zendo has been converted into a. My wife is. She's very wonderful in setting things up aesthetically and with plants, and it looks very different than the Zendo that we had here for 38 years.
Wow. And what happened to the people who sat with you?
We still maintain contact with some of them. And they're very, very wonderful people. We just couldn't, like I say, we just couldn't continue with the pandemic situation. It went on for a long time, and we also felt, we're elderly folks, and so there was a certain vulnerability there, just from a physical point of view of, in terms of, getting this so-called COVID and becoming really ill or something. So we were very concerned about that as well. And
did you get COVID?
We never did get COVID.
Is that right? Well, my gosh.
You got it, and is your wife's name Katrina?
Katrinka.
Well, Katrinka.
Katrinka.
How do you say?
Katrinka.
Katrinka. Oh, very nice. Katrinka. Oh, Katrinka.
Right, and it's actually Dutch.
Oh, really?
It can also be Russian.
Okay.
And her middle name's Dutch too, Sudyam. Katrinka Sudyam McKay, and that's Scottish.
Huh. In Indonesia, I guess you used to be a Dutch colony, I believe.
That's true. Until they after the war, when the Japanese left, they immediately started fighting with the Dutch. They did not want the Dutch to take them over again. Yeah. And their leader was Sukarno, and 1,000 Japanese troops stayed behind to help them fight against the Dutch. And they won that pretty quick, and have been independent since then.
Yeah.
Hey, now in Rochester, do you remember a monk named Sozan?
I don't.
His name, his regular name was Jeffrey Volk.
Jeff Volk, yeah, I do remember that name. Jeff Volk.
Yeah.
I remember he was into I think he was into wheatgrass or something.
Oh, that sounds like him. Definitely, he's still like that. He's totally into stuff. In fact, we just ordered some vitamins and special things, and he will get special wheatgrasses for him because he doesn't have a card. But he was there 9 years, and
okay.
And then he was in Myanmar Theravada monastery for 7 years, and he's been in Sri Lanka and here, and he lives here in Bali, and we see him now and then.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's it. It's interesting. The life there in Bali, it's going well for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been there now for 10 years or something, you said?
Well, this is our 10th year.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, his name now is Moneya.
Is that from the Theravadan place or something?
Yeah.
He had a brother who also He has a brother who practiced at the Rochester Center too, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, his brother practiced there. Is that right?
Do you remember his name?
I can get it in just a second.
Donald, that doesn't ring a bell even. Donald Volk, that's interesting.
Yeah, his brother's Donald. Or Don.
Maybe
Donald
Don?
Abraham Volk.
And
he lives in Hawaii, and Monea or Jeffrey. I only call him Monea. He had a window cleaning business.
Oh,
there.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Or maybe it was carpet cleaning. Yeah, I think it might have been carpet cleaning, or maybe both. He lives with a wonderful Balinese family in a lovely home he built on their property. Really, really nice, using the finest craftsmen and very traditional methods for a lot of it, and some of it's sort of modern, and it's really nice. Oh, that was so perfect when you said he was into wheatgrass. I'm going to tell Katrinka that. Katrinka told me to be sure to ask you about that.
Oh, okay.
Because, I told her you'd been in Rochester.
Right.
That's really interesting. Well, look, Bob, I think we've covered an enormous amount of territory here. There's really, really very interesting, and I'm very impressed with your practice and your sincerity. And I think you understand the word serious in the, you've taken practice seriously without maybe being too serious, I hope.
Right.
Yeah. You want the wholesome serious.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's your wife's name?
Her name is Hennie, for Henriette. Hennie, Hennie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In Dutch, her nickname in Dutch would be Jet, but Jet is spelled Jet. So Jet wouldn't work so well here because people would pronounce it Jet,
Oh, so, that's funny. I see. I do have her name here, Hennie. Yeah. And actually, Pat Joshu Sasaki gave me your phone number, but I already had it. You and I talked a long time ago.
That's right. Yeah, when you were putting together Crooked Cucumber, I think.
Right. So I have stuff from you from back then and now, and Jeff Sherman sent you an email. I didn't have an email. He sent you an email and you responded. That was great.
Of course, yeah.
That was great.
Absolutely.
Well, do you have anything else you want to say?
Well, I didn't know if, like I say, I was going to ask just some more personal things that I don't know. I don't feel comfortable being in public, just because it's in the individual privacy issues. So is it possible to end the recording and still to talk?
No, I'm just cut it out. So at this point, I cut out about an hour of Bob and me talking about people, what's happening with so-and-so and this and that. Just, that sort of thing. He just didn't want to get into gossip. So then we come back here to wrap it up.
Taking your time, David. Anything else at this point in time?
No. It's been good speaking with you.
The same here, very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
So, look, you take care. Send me a photo. We've got that older one. And stay in touch.
There you go. I will do that. Now I'll send you an updated photo of Bob Shuman, I guess the guy's name is. Okay, well, thank you so much, David. And once again, all the very best.
Yeah, same to you. Take care.
There you go.
All right.
Take very good care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Bob Shuman, Robert Shuman. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all that. You're a very sincere person, and you've really applied yourself, and that in itself is inspiring. This has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm D.C. Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita and dear lovely Katrinka. And any cat that happens to wander in that she can get hold of, especially if it's young, will surely join us because she misses our cat. Our cat, Cuchita, who is buried in the front yard. And those of us who are alive and those of us who have passed on wish you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.